The icy North Sea waves crashed against the desolate Scottish coast, their relentless force a testament to nature's fury. Each surge pulled a little bit of Scotland back into its depths, eroding the land with every powerful wave. Two women, one a grandmother, the other barely more than a girl, were bound tightly to stakes driven into the unforgiving sand, their faces pale with fear. The tide was coming in, inching closer with every passing moment. They were to be drowned, a slow and agonizing death as the cold water rose around them, their crime. They were Covenanters, steadfast in their Presbyterian faith in a Scotland torn apart by religious turmoil and strife. These were the killing times, a dark chapter in Scottish history where neighbor turned against neighbor in the name of God, and loyalty was a dangerous game. These two women, both named Margaret, were about to become martyrs, their courage unwavering even in the face of death. Their names would be added to the long list of those who suffered and died for their beliefs, etched into the annals of history. Their stories, though separated by miles and circumstances, were tragically intertwined by the brutal reality of the time, a testament to the harshness of their era. But how did they get here, with Scot killing Scot in such a merciless manner? What events led to this gruesome scene on a windswept Scottish shore where faith and politics collided so violently? To understand the plight of these women, we must journey back to a time of immense religious and political upheaval, a period marked by intense conflict and transformation, a time when Scotland was forged in the fires of the Reformation, reshaping the nation's identity and destiny forever.
I'm Brian Nash from How We Got Here Genealogy, and this is another dive into the history of Scotland, the land of my ancestors and possibly yours. According to recent censuses, 15.1% of Canadians claim Scottish heritage, while in Australia, the recent census had it at just over 9% of their population. Unfortunately, the US of A doesn't separate the Scot and Irish ancestry. You'll hear more of the story of the two Margarets later in the video and what they were fighting for. In 1685, it was still a controversy in 1714 when my seventh great grandfather, a minister in the Church of Scotland, Reverend John Anderson, wrote a pamphlet called Defense of Church Government, Faith, Worship, and the Spirit of Presbyterianism. While he wasn't a martyr, he is now forever memorialized in Wikipedia as John Anderson, theologian and controversialist. I'm kind of proud of that myself. It's a name I'd love to aspire to. Anyways, the killing times, which happened in the mid to late 17th century, had an effect on Scotland and well beyond, as it marks the beginning of some of the values that we are still supposed to hold today in the English-speaking Western world. But before we talk about the killing times, I think it's important to take you back even further.
Scotland in the 16th century was a nation in flux, a land where ancient traditions clashed with new ideas. The old Catholic order was crumbling, its once unassailable authority now questioned and undermined. This was largely due to the rise of Protestantism, a movement sweeping across Europe with fervor and determination. John Knox, a fiery preacher with a tongue as sharp as his wit, returned from exile in Geneva with a vision for a new Scotland, a Scotland cleansed of what he saw as the idolatry and corruption of the Catholic Church. He sought to reform the very fabric of Scottish society. Knox's sermons were incendiary, igniting the hearts and minds of the common people, stirring them to action. He preached vehemently against the excesses of the Catholic clergy and the overarching authority of the Pope, calling for a simpler, more personal relationship with God. Free from the opulence and corruption he saw in the church, his words resonated with many, particularly the growing merchant class who resented the power and influence of the church and the aristocracy. This religious revolution, however, was not a bloodless affair. It was a time of great turmoil and strife. Scotland, with its deep-seated clan loyalties and a long history of violence, was ripe for conflict and upheaval. The stage was set for a monumental clash of ideologies, a battle for the very soul of a nation, one that would shape Scotland's future for generations to come. The Reformation in Scotland was a tumultuous period marked by violence and political intrigue. The young Mary, Queen of Scots, a Catholic, found herself at odds with the growing Protestant faction led by Knox. In the summer of 1558, Knox published his best known pamphlet, the first blast of the trumpet against the monstrous regiment of women. In calling the regimen or rule of women monstrous, he meant that it was unnatural. Knox states that his purpose was to demonstrate how abominable before God is the empire or rule of a wicked woman, yea, of a traitoress and bastard. The women rulers that Knox had in mind were Queen Mary I of England and Mary of Guise, the Dowager Queen of Scotland, and regent on behalf of her daughter Mary, Queen of Scots. Her eventual abdication and flight to England only deepened the divide. As the Protestant cause gained momentum, the Scottish Parliament formally adopted Presbyterianism as the nation's official religion. This new church, with its emphasis on simplicity, predestination, and the sole authority of the Bible, would become a defining force in Scottish life. But the transition was far from smooth. Many remained loyal to the old faith, particularly in the Highlands and Islands, where Catholicism remained deeply entrenched. The struggle for religious dominance would continue to shape Scotland for generations to come. Out of this maelstrom of religious fervor emerged a new breed of Protestant the Covenanters. They were ordinary men and women, farmers, merchants, and laborers, united by their unwavering commitment to Presbyterianism and their deep suspicion of any attempt to reimpose Catholicism upon them. Fearing that the Stuart monarchs, with their Catholic sympathies, were attempting to undermine their hard-won religious freedom, the Covenanters signed the first of many national covenants. The Solemn League and Covenant was an agreement between the Scottish Covenanters and the leaders of the English parliamentarians in 1643 during the First English Civil War, a theater of conflict in the Wars of the Three Kingdoms. On August 17, 1643, the Church of Scotland, the Kirk, accepted it, and on September 25, 1643, so did the English Parliament and the Westminster Assembly. These documents, signed in the face of royal opposition, were more than just religious declarations. They were acts of defiance, assertions of the people's right to determine their own spiritual destiny. The Covenanters were prepared to fight, and fight they did. They raised armies, battled royalist forces, and even occupied Edinburgh in their struggle to preserve their religious liberty. These were not simply battles for theological supremacy, they were struggles for political power and self-determination. The reign of Charles II ushered in a period of intense persecution known as the Killing Time. Determined to impose his will on Scotland and eradicate the Covenanters, Charles II was King of Scotland from 1649 until 1651, and King of England, Scotland, and Ireland from the 1660 restoration of the monarchy until his death in 1685. Charles unleashed a reign of terror upon the Scottish lowlands, the heartland of the Covenanting movement. Government troops, led by the ruthless Graham of Clavyhouse, roamed the countryside, hunting down those suspected of harboring Covenanters, or attending illegal open-air religious gatherings known as conventicles. These gatherings, held in secret locations, were acts of defiance, testament to the Covenanters' unwavering faith in the face of persecution. Thousands were imprisoned, tortured, or executed without trial. Families were torn apart, their homes and livelihoods destroyed. The mere act of refusing to renounce the covenant or acknowledge the king's supremacy in spiritual matters was enough to warrant a death sentence.
I thought this was a good time for me to let you know. This is the type of content I create. Content that tells the stories of our past or that helps you learn how to research your own family history so you can tell your own story. If you like and want to see more of this type of content, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bells so you will be one of the first to know when I publish something new. I want to help support the work of this channel so it can continue. Look in the description of this video for various ways, or you can just hit the thanks button now. Okay, back to our story.
Growing up, Margaret Wilson, her brother and sister, had often had to hide from government troops because they wouldn't go to hear the Episcopal ministers. One day, however, Margaret, when she was 18, and her sister Agnes, only 13, they were finally caught. Their father managed to get his younger daughter released, but he couldn't save Margaret. She was to be drowned with an older woman, Margaret McLaughlin. The soldiers tied them both to wooden stakes in the water. Bound to their stakes on that desolate beach unfolds against this backdrop of terror and religious persecution. Accused of attending conventicles and refusing to renounce their faith, they were condemned as traitors and sentenced to death by drowning. Their crime, in the eyes of their persecutors, was not merely religious dissent, it was treason. These young women, facing their impending doom with remarkable courage and composure, became powerful symbols of the Covenanters' unwavering faith. On May 11, 1685, Margaret Wilson and Margaret McLauchlan were drowned in the Solway Firth at Wigtown for attending conventicles and refusing to take the oath against James Renwick's apologetical declaration. The soldiers tied them both to wooden stakes in the water. The younger Margaret was tied nearer to the shore so would see the older woman die first and be persuaded to give up her beliefs so she wouldn't die as well. As the older woman was drowning, the soldiers asked the younger Margaret what she thought of her now. Margaret Wilson replied, "I see Christ wrestling there." Then, just when she herself was about to drown, the soldiers lifted up her head and asked her to pray for the king. She answered, "God save him if he will, for it is his salvation I desire." However, when they asked her to take the oath, she said, "I will not. I am one of Christ's children. Let me go." The soldiers then pushed her head down under the water again until she died. Just before she died, Margaret had sung from Psalm 25. Their deaths, far from breaking the spirit of the Covenanting movement, only served to strengthen the resolve of those who continued to resist the king's oppressive policies. Their names, like those of so many others who suffered and died during the killing time, would be etched into the annals of Scottish history, a testament to the enduring power of faith in the face of adversity. The killing time eventually came to an end with the Glorious Revolution of 1688, which saw the deposition of James II and the ascension of William and Mary to the throne. This monumental shift in power marked the beginning of a new chapter in British history, one that would have lasting impacts on the religious and political landscape of Scotland. The Covenanters, their sacrifices not in vain, finally saw their Presbyterian faith restored as the established religion of Scotland. Their perseverance and unwavering faith had finally borne fruit, bringing a sense of justice and vindication to their long and arduous struggle. The Revolution Settlement of 1690 granted Presbyterianism legal recognition and paved the way for a new era of relative religious tolerance in Scotland. This legal acknowledgement was a significant milestone, ensuring that the hard-won freedoms of the Covenanters would be protected and respected. The Covenanters, once persecuted outlaws, were now hailed as heroes, their sacrifices commemorated in song story and stone. Their legacy was enshrined in the cultural memory of Scotland, serving as a powerful reminder of their courage and resilience. However, the legacy of the killing time continued to cast a long shadow over Scottish life. The memories of those dark days lingered, influencing the collective consciousness of the nation. The divisions it had exposed, the wounds it had inflicted upon the Scottish psyche would not heal easily. The scars of the past were deep, and the process of healing and reconciliation would take generations. The struggle for religious and political freedom was far from over, as future conflicts, such as the Jacobite rebellions, would soon demonstrate. These subsequent upheavals would continue to shape the destiny of Scotland, echoing the unresolved tensions of the killing time. The Covenanters' impact resonated far beyond the borders of Scotland. Not all of them stayed in Scotland. Their unwavering commitment to their principles, their willingness to fight and die for their beliefs, served as an inspiration to others struggling for religious and political freedom across Europe and the New World. Their ideas, carried by emigrants fleeing persecution, found fertile ground in the American colonies. Throughout the 17th century, Covenanter congregations were established in Ireland, primarily in Ulster. For a variety of reasons, many subsequently migrated to North America. In 1717, William Tennant moved with his family to Philadelphia, where he later founded Log College, the first Presbyterian seminary in North America. The principles of self-government, resistance to tyranny, and the separation of church and state, so fiercely defended by the Covenanters, helped shape the development of American democracy. The Covenanters' legacy is particularly evident in the strong Presbyterian traditions found in parts of the United States, a lasting testament to the enduring power of their convictions. In Canada, the Covenanters' influence can be traced to the shores of Nova Scotia, particularly in regions like Chignecto, and in the Annapolis Valley, specifically the community of Grand Prix, just outside of Wolfville, home to Acadia University.
Later, during the clearances and beyond, Scottish settlers, many of whom descended from the Covenanters, brought with them their strong religious beliefs and their unwavering commitment to Presbyterianism. They established churches, schools, and communities that reflected their values, creating a distinctive cultural landscape that endures to this day. Their story is passed down through generations, serve as a reminder of sacrifices made in the name of religious freedom and for enduring and the enduring legacy of the Covenanters. The Killing Times, while though a dark chapter in Scottish history, ultimately gave rise to a legacy of resilience, determination, and unwavering faith that continues to inspire people around the world. The story of the Covenanters is a testament to the power of belief to shape history in the enduring human struggle for freedom. Just one of the stories that shapes those like myself who claim Scottish descent, and those who, though not descended by blood nonetheless, have inherited their culture, laws, and systems of government shaped by these men and women, like the two Margarets, who triumphed over adversity and took a stand for freedom and what is right and just. Choose these videos here to get a start on searching for your own ancestor story, or to hear one of my viewers' own family story. Click this video here. And until next time, keep searching for your ancestors.